do 5 top reasons you should do cardiovascular training. You can peek if you want. It's not really a
I'm
test.
thinking blood pressure.
Blood pressure is one of them, yeah. So, decrease, right? Decrease in blood pressure.
Helps to lose weight.
Yep.
Helps to reduce stress.
Yep. That's a big one. Why is that important?
Because stress is inflammatory and it causes a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah. And a lot of time we just don't even focus on stress. We think that we're not stressed, but
We're all stressed.
oh, bad. Yeah. But physical stress and mental stress are different. Physical stress with exercise is a little different than mental stress. Mental stress will cause spikes in cortisol and cause a whole array of problems, like Lori just said. But what else?
Um,
Heart health.
Mm-hmm. In which way?
dilates all your blood vessels, gets your oxygen flowing.
Yep. What else would be with heart health? What does cardio training directly do to your heart?
Exercise, right?
Your heart's a muscle. Yep. So you need to strengthen your heart rate. You can't just do strength training all the time. So you gotta strength train your heart rate, or your heart rather. And one more.
There's tons of
Yep, there's about 18 of them.
yeah.
You can pick.
All right.
Find one that's different from all these 4. One that surprises you.
I like this, ward off viral illnesses.
There you go. That's actually the one
We
I was
need
looking
that
for.
this time of year.
That's the one I was looking for. Decrease illness. So a lot of times people will say, yeah, probably should go to the gym, sweat out the cold. And it really does work. Because I mean you're pushing through this like you're just getting a lot of oxygen through all your muscles. Your muscles are inflamed. It's the good physical stress that your body needs. You're gonna be you're gonna be a lot tired, more tired, but I mean that's
Kinda like
okay.
detoxing.
Yeah, in a way, you're sweating more, which gets rid of the virus a little bit quicker. So that needs to be studied a little bit more. It does definitely decrease risk of illness as a primary preventive technique, but tertiary, I don't know how effective it technically is for decreasing illness. I don't know if it's a certain percentage, depending on the life. I'm sure if you're a normal human with nothing wrong with you, I'm sure it really does decrease. But yep. So, how do we incorporate cardiovascular training in our programs?
You mean what we're doing? How do we incorporate it?
Yeah, in your
Give me
day-to-day.
classes.
Boot camp and any of those things. You know?
Yep. So what's a general time frame that we should be doing cardio? How many
150
min-
minutes.
150 minutes. Nice. Of what kind of?
Moderate. Or 75 of vigorous.
Yeah. Or
And as long as it's 10 minutes increments of more,
Mhm.
you can break it down.
yeah. Yep. You can also do a combo of the 2. Okay.
So like if I do boot camp, I wasn't sure if I should be counting that as, you said it can count for both,
Yeah, it's counted as both.
but like
Definitely.
how many minutes can I count?
Just depends on what the class is devised as. I mean, if it's a lot of running, then you know that it's going to count for more minutes of cardio. If it's a lot more strength oriented, then count it for strength. But
The whole
strength,
thing or break it up?
yeah, break it up. Yeah, because an hour of boot camp isn't necessarily training for an hour. You know, you have to factor in your breaks. You have to factor in how long your heart rate's elevated. Okay, cardiovascular training is really how long your heart rate is elevated for a prolonged period of time. And if it's not elevated enough, like you know now, if it's less than that 55% threshold, then you're not getting the cardiovascular benefit of these things plus the other 14, 15 that I wrote down for you guys. So when we're doing the cardiovascular training, that's the main thing that we need to focus on, that our heart rate is elevated for the majority of the time. And if it drops, goes back up, drops, goes back up, that's good. That's interval training, okay? Spikes like this in your heart rate, but it may not necessarily mean that we're getting the total amount of minutes that we need, okay? That's why having a combo of the two is most important. It's not good to just do 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. You know what I mean? 75 minutes really isn't that long either. You figure if you're doing high intensity interval training for 20 minutes at a time, 3 or 4 times a week, that's no problem. You just did it in 2, 3. But so having a good combination of the two is best for your heart, because too much vigorous, okay, can have adverse effects. Okay, it can cause too much stress on your body. It can cause too much illness because your body is utilizing everything that it needs to produce that energy, and you may not have enough energy to ward off viruses or bacteria, especially during the wintertime when it's so prevalent.
And when you say vigorous, are you saying that we should be on the upper end of that threshold that
Mhm.
would be considered vigorous?
Yep.
Okay.
So if you do, so the moderate would probably be between, say, 60 to 75%. Okay? And your vigorous is really 80 to 95% of your max.
Okay.
So are we ever doing that in boot camp?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you know, when you feel
Oh, when I'm
thoroughly
exhausted.
exhausted, that's
Yeah.
vigorous. Okay? We're gonna go over a quick thing right now that's called the rate of perceived exertion
Yeah.
and talk test. So, rate of perceived exertion, or RPE for short, is it's characterized as individual because it's just what it is. There's a scale, and there's 2 scales. There's one that goes from 1 to 19. There's another scale that goes from 1 to 9. And we picked the 1 to 9 scale just because of relative ease. You know, at the where you go 14 or 15 on an RPE scale. So 1, okay, if you remember, is what? I touched this like just very briefly.
Is this just sitting?
Mhm. Yep, sitting.
I'm sorry, what was RPE?
Rate of perceived exertion. Yep. Yeah, so 1 is really just sitting. It's not doing any sort of physical activity. Easy talking, no problem. As you progress numerically downward and you get to 9, okay, what do you think 9 would be?
Breathless.
Yeah, to the point of sheer exhaustion. You can't continue, okay, for more than a few seconds. Okay, so just so tired, can't go anymore. That's really when your heart rate is so elevated that you're in the 90 to 95% of your maximum heart rate.
And you don't want to get there?
Oh, no, you can get here, that's fine. But when you get here too much, that's a problem. So a lot of people that are obsessed with high intensity interval training, you both have heard of, what's that thing called with Sean T, Insanity. Have you heard of
yeah,
that?
Yeah.
Insanity?
Mhm.
It's about,
It's sort of like PX90.
That's
Yeah,
what I was
kind of.
thinking of, yeah.
it's 40 or 50 minutes long at times of doing nothing but this. So instead
Well,
of,
how can they do it? You just
you
build
lose
up.
weight, but it's not good for your heart to be that elevated for so long. And the fact that they do that 4 to 5 times a week is just not good for heart health. Yeah, you're gonna lose weight, but like I said, all these other factors,
You're stressing.
oh yeah.
Over-stressing.
Right. This will still be a factor. You'll still lose weight, but you could eventually have an increase in blood pressure because you're so stressed.
Yeah.
Your stress levels will increase, your heart health is gonna decrease. It's too taxed all the time. So, at a moderate intensity, okay, right around a 6 or a 7, probably closer to 5. We'll say 5 and 6. Okay, that would be moderate. Now there's actual data for these numbers. Okay, they're at the gym. I don't know, I can't remember them off the top of my head. But I'm almost positive that 5 or 6 is moderate intensity. Now it's up to you to determine what number you are. And so when we go to the gym tonight, we're gonna experiment with RPE, the talk test, which I can go over in a second, and relating both of those tests to what your actual heart rate is. People who either don't work out often enough or they don't like getting to that point where they're so exhausted, they can't differentiate between numbers because they have a challenge, because they don't think that, or they think that they're so exhausted, but really they're not. Their heart rate is just slightly elevated, they never felt that before. So using an RPE scale is difficult when they're not trained, or they've never worked out in the past. So then you have another, are you all set with this?
Yeah.
Good. So then you have another test called the talk test. What do you think that entails?
You answer because I know, because it's made me do it.
How you can, if you can carry on a conversation
Yeah.
while you're
Perfect.
working out.
Can you carry a conversation?
If you're carrying on a conversation, you're not working hard enough, right?
Yeah. Got it.
You
To
have-
put it
you-
simply.
You can only do like one sentence and then you.
Yeah, so I mean, this one again is subjective. It depends on where you currently are, health-wise, physically fit-wise anyway. So you could have, if you're doing a talk test and the individual is able to speak like we're speaking, okay, you can correlate that to a RPE of 1, okay? So complete sentences equals 1 on an RPE. Okay, as you progress again numerically, say you hit number 4, and you're taking a breath in between every other word. That correlates to about a 9, okay, 8 or a 9 on the RPE scale.
So it's a much shorter scale than the other.
Well, this isn't a scale. These are just numbered for convenience. So when we're taking a breath in between every other word, that's when you know that your heart rate's pretty taxing. And that one you can't really fake just because you're so out of breath that you're literally gasping for air. And that's when you know that you can correlate that to a 9. In between is the tricky part for you to tell whether or not you fit on an RPE of whatever it is that you're trying to correlate to. So when we go to the gym in about 10 minutes, we're going to try to match our percentages to the RPE scale and to the talk test. That way when you're training yourself, you can be like, okay, well I feel like I'm at 3, or I feel like I'm at 7, what's my heart rate? Oh, my heart rate's only like 120. Why do I feel like an 8? Okay? Things like that. We're going to figure out. What we don't want is you feeling this, and your heart rate is only here. That's not what we want to happen. Okay? Because that just means that you're so deconditioned, okay, heart-wise, cardiovascular-wise, that you won't be able to determine how hard you're working out by yourself. That's why classes are always a nice thing, because they do push you.
Because they what?
They just push you. Yeah. So a lot of times people just need classes or extra motivation to do stuff, which is no big deal.
Because I was gonna just ask you, you know, should I be doing it on my own so I know I get up in those ranges
Yeah. Why not?
and not do boot camp?
Where,
I like boot camp.
right.
And
If you're a self-motivated individual and you can handle the workouts and you have a wide diversity of exercises that you want to do, then do your own thing.
no, but that's what I need you to teach me those.
Oh yeah. I mean
You
that's
know,
what we're going to go over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright. So,
Different forms of cardiovascular training, different forms of muscular strength and endurance, that kind of thing. Great.
so our heart rate should be in the 60 to 75 range for moderate.
For moderate, right. Yeah. Yeah, that 55% zone, 55% is kind of cutting it, a little short, so we go for 60. I mean, the recommended percentages are 55 to 95%. 95 is a little too high, it's too close for me personally. I don't want to be that close to my maximum heart rate for too long anyway. It's not worth the risk. Because you could eventually go into have tachycardia problems if you train so much in this percentile.
So is there a thing at the gym that shows, because you know, I didn't calculate what my new thing is, but
What new thing?
you know, I know what my maximum is.
Your
but-
max heart rate?
Yeah,
Yep.
169.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what my minimum is now. because it's that formula, right?
Your minimum
Yeah.
of the 55%? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, so let's do it out. So, we're gonna take that 220
Yep.
minus your age, which is
51,
51.
so it's like 169, right?
Yeah, 169 is your maximum heart rate. Yep. Then we take that maximum heart rate, and we do what?
Times it by,
Nope.
was that, or,
Subtract your resting heart rate.
Yeah.
so my resting was 60,
Okay. And that
so
equals,
109.
yep, as your heart rate reserve. And then what do you do?
Take that and multiply by 55%.
Hmm?
And then add back in the resting heart rate.
Right. That equals your low end heart rate of, get my fancy calculator out. Look at that. Let's take a look.
Because I noticed, Dave Hewish wears a monitor a
Yep.
lot. He must always want to know where it is.
Oh, probably. 120 is your low.
Okay, so 120,
Yep. Do you have your high, you said?
169.
That's your max.
Oh,
Yep. So we're gonna take that 109, multiply it by the 90%. Add back in your 60 for your heart rate, which equals your high end. Of. Stuff's fun. It's pretty interesting. 158.
so it's not much different. I mean, the other day when we did it, I was 115 to 157. If
Right.
we did it right.
But now see the difference though. You're 5 beats off. So that 5 beats may not sound like a lot, but if you're constantly at 110, 115, you're not hitting your 55%.
Well, when I did it the other day at the gym,
Mm-hmm.
I was 115.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, working a little harder to get it elevated. That's,
Oh, like I was.
yeah, that's what we need to work on right here. Is getting steady.
In the zone.
Yeah, get in the zone. Get above this number, and stay a little bit below this number. For interval training, be around this number, because interval training causes your heart rate to do this. Stay flat, little spike up, right? A gradual crease down sometimes. Then you stay up and you go up a little higher for a little bit longer of a time or whatever. Sometimes you stay, and then you drop right down, and that's your rest. You go on and on and on and so on and so forth. That's interval training. Because you have 3 different types of training in cardiovascular. You have the interval training. You have continuous training. What do you think continuous training is?
You stay at the same rate, heart rate throughout the whole thing?
Yeah,
Like running?
perfect.
maybe?
Yeah. You keep in a relatively moderate heart rate zone for a prolonged period of time. Okay?
So is there one better than the other?
It depends on what you're looking for, but it's important to incorporate, such as you saw, of moderate and vigorous intensities. And then you have, it's like variable training. That's what we'll call it. And variable training is a combo, really, of, well, it's not really a combo of interval training. It has to do with continuous training, but variable training includes different forms of that continuous effort.
So is like is variable training like you're running and then you sprint like to the next telephone pole?
Kind of,
And that's
yeah.
variable, and
Right.
then you go back to running?
Right. You pick the same amount of time that you would for continuous, but you add in tweaks to your exercise program, such as sprinting short distance, not causing large spikes in your heart rate, because the point of variable training is not to do this. The point of continuous training is to elevate your heart rate from its base to the moderate, and to sustain this. This is called a steady state.
So what's the point of each one?
Different forms of training. It's just like a runner wouldn't just run. Okay? You would think that they would, but they don't. They have to train both upper body strength, lower body strength. They have to do different things to help them get up here quicker, or help them steady this out longer. Okay? So steady state is very important when we're in the continuous and the variable training. The sooner we can get here, the more fit technically you would be. Okay? This is just your body's natural way of switching, if you will, from being at rest to being active. So you know that 4 to, well, depends on this person, but it could be from 2 minutes to 10 minutes. You know that point where you just don't want to do anything. Like, this sucks, I don't want to be here, blah, blah, blah. Then you get past that 10-minute mark, or 4-minute mark, wherever you are, and you're like, oh, no problem, I can do this. That's called your steady
I
state
remember
training.
John talking about that.
Yeah,
Like he would go run and he would want to quit.
right,
But he says that if I could just push through it, he
It's
says
very
then I
short.
could run.
right. Your body naturally switches over to the preferred energy system that you're working in. In this case, it's the aerobic system. Okay, we're not gonna
And
get into
that's
that.
variable or that?
This is continuous, variable, depends on what you
Oh.
want. Now, when you add variable training, you add little spikes in here, and then you can kind of drop down back to your continuous, little spike here, come back, drop down to your continuous. Interval training, okay, you're here, bam, bam, it's all over the place, okay? You can go for 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, that's called Tabata. That's interval training. So you're allowing your heart rate to come back down slowly, and then you're spiking it back up again. Then your heart rate comes back down a little bit, and then you spike it up again. So that works on your heart rate reserve. How fast your heart rate can come back down to normal indicates a very different level of fitness, if you will. So if you're doing continuous training, for example, and you've reached your steady state, you're going out for 20 minutes or whatever, and you take a small little rest, okay, you check your heart rate. If it's not back down to your resting heart rate or somewhere near there within a minute to 2 minutes, then you know that you're a little deconditioned. Your heart rate should come down relatively quickly. So if it stays elevated for so long, that means we need to work on your aerobic capacity. And that's what continuous and variable training did. Interval training works a little differently. Interval training works on producing more blood flow, right, from your heart. You get your heart pounding, and it works on creating that deficit from your heart rate being spiked to heart rate being low. And it wants to bring it back down. Your heart rate always wants to come back down, homeostasis. Okay, your body's always naturally trying to be normal. When you cause these spikes, your body's like, what the heck's going on? And it's trying to fix itself, and that's what training is all about. You're training your heart rate to be most efficient. You have a lower heart rate, you're more efficient. You have a high heart rate, you're not as efficient, because your heart's pounding to feed it through the body. All three of these work on that, but it's important to differentiate the amount of training in each. Interval training really should be done maybe 1 to 2 times per week. That's it.
I mean,
We do that way too much though. Interval training.
we do.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't.
I was just
do it.
about to ask that because of the people who like me,
Yep.
we don't like doing like continuous
No.
training.
Nope. Some people would rather do a 20-minute quick little
Yep.
session instead of putting in the time to do this, which this should be 3 to 4 days.
Mhm.
So, you said something that I wanted to ask a question about, but I can't remember now.
And this
So,
was
3 to 4 days,
relatively the same.
like, okay, so list continuous training.
Mhm.
I mean, interval training is like boot camp.
Interval training is any time that you're causing your heart rate to spike up and then you have a smaller amount of rest.
I'd say boot camp's more variable, wouldn't you?
It's depending on the time. Like each instructor is different. So yeah, you make a point. During my classes, it's almost on the cusp of variable and interval training because I do minute trainings in blocks followed by 20 to 30 seconds of rest in between those. That's still interval training, but it's still variable training nonetheless. That's what I mean. It's sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate between the two that you're working in.
So what would I be doing for continuous training?
That's just simply going out for 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever long time frame that you want to do at a steady state.
Or your elliptical for 30 minutes.
Right. Anything that
I mean-
anything that you maintain a moderate intensity.
Okay, so my snowshoeing,
If your heart rate's elevated and and you're steady in that heart rate zone, then that's continuous work.
This is my problem.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, because I do boot camp twice a week, that's what I do.
Yeah, and that's good.
But I snowshoe every day at work, except today was my first day, I'm working at home now.
Yep.
But I never leave someone behind. So if we're a fast group,
Yep.
and if there's one that's tagging along behind,
Yep.
I'll go and walk with her.
Yeah.
Because I just don't believe, they won't come out if they're
No.
way behind.
But that's
But
good, but it's
it's-
bad in the sense that you're not
I'm
getting
not
your work.
getting my work out.
Right.
If those slow ones don't come, then I'm definitely doing
Right.
the continuous, because we're sweating and we're,
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you don't, like, the point of all this is not to overwhelm you or to throw you off course. It's just to show you there's many different ways to get cardiovascular
yeah, I
training
just
in.
didn't know it.
You don't need to just be on the elliptical for an hour and be like, okay, well, I did my cardio. No,
But if
you
you're
have
on
so many
elliptical for an
options.
hour, you've done your continuous.
Yeah. But you don't need to check off, oh, I did continuous today. That's
No, but
that's
you wanna
advanced,
do-
that's
but
for
you-
athletes.
But you wanna do a mixture,
Yeah,
even everybody really should.
everybody should do a mixture, definitely. Have one, quick little 20-minute cardio session once a week, maybe twice a week at the most, and then work on your 45 minutes to 60 minutes of continuous to variable training, where you maybe throw in a little spike here and there. If you're feeling a little extra energy boost or something like that. But continuous training is what most of us need to do. It's just being in that steady state zone, working on our aerobic base, okay, providing more oxygen, having a better energy system for us to convert, so that way we can actually do the things that we want to do. And again, continuous training correlates to weight loss, variable training correlates to weight loss. The best way to lose weight is interval training, because it's so high intense. Your body's converting all the glucose that's stored in your body, that's sugar, to energy. So when you're doing continuous training, theorists say that you're tapping into your fat cells more than your glucose in your bloodstream and your liver. That can be true, but when you're tapping into your fat cells, that's more with 1.5 to 2 hours worth of training. That's when you start converting fat to fuel. But you're still gonna lose weight because you're burning off carbohydrates, you're burning off glucose, burning off the liver glycogen. That's the whole point.
I think I've been doing it so long, I just do the same.
Variable training, okay, one day of the week, do the same thing they did for continuous, but throw in a little spike action. Do a sprint on the treadmill if you're gonna run on the treadmill, or do some sprints on the elliptical if you're gonna use the elliptical. Increase your speed on the Stairmaster, okay, then steady it back down. Give yourself about 2 minutes of rest and then try it again, okay? Variable training is the same as continuous, except you just add in little features, okay? And then interval training is gonna be the hardest day. That's when your heart rate is gonna be spiked, and that's what I'm gonna show you when we go down there. I'm gonna show you how to elevate your heart rate, let it rest.
So that looks like the big difference with the variable and the interval is that the variable, you get up to your moderate heart rate and you go above it, but you don't go below it.
Exactly.
Whereas interval, you are going up
Exactly.
and down.
Yeah, you're working on your heart rate, trying to have it come back down as close as it can
Rest.
to rest.
Okay.
Which one is?
Interval.
And then you just-
Right, and then you spike it right back up again. So, now the whatever the show was, with Sean T, Insanity, I don't know, I can't remember. He calls it maximum interval training or whatever, where people have a steady state and then they spike up, right? This is what traditional interval training is. They come back down and then they flat line out, okay, that's their rest. He flips that, and so you're high intense for a large amount of minutes.
Yeah.
You take a rest. That rest is so short that you're right back up to your high intensity for
I don't
minutes.
see how they can do it.
What do
It's
you
gonna
mean?
be exhausting.
Of course, I did it for 2 weeks prior to my education, and I felt like my heart was gonna pound out of my chest the entire time. But that's the whole point, according to him. He wants you to feel like that.
Yeah,
Like you're
but
gonna
I
die.
would think it would be good for you.
It's not good for you, no.
And I would think there might be people out there that are doing that really shouldn't be doing that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Any type of training just needs to be cleared by a physician. I mean, especially if one's been sedentary for many, many years or even months. dangerous sometimes, you know? Like I had one woman